I woke up to a quiet house. Too quiet. There were no soft footsteps down the hallway. No clatter of pans in the kitchen. No scent of breakfast or fresh coffee. Just silence. And cold air hanging in the room like it was holding its breath with me. I reached over to Randall's side of the bed. It was already made. Neat. Not a wrinkle on the pillow. He'd left before sunrise, apparently. No sticky note on the nightstand. No text waiting for me on my phone. Nothing. It was my 40th birthday. I pulled on my robe, past the hallway mirror without looking, and padded into the kitchen. The sink was full of last night's dishes. No balloons. No flowers. Just a crumb-covered counter and the hum of the fridge. My son, Caleb, shuffled in a few minutes later, eyes glued to his phone. I cleared my throat, hopeful. "Hey, baby." "Hey, Mom," he muttered, scrolling, not even glancing up. "That's it?" I asked with a nervous laugh. "Not even a happy birthday?" He blinked like I'd interrupted a dream. "Oh. Right. Happy birthday. Love you." And just like that, he disappeared into the living room, earbuds in. I leaned against the kitchen island, hugging my arms. Maybe they were planning something. A surprise later tonight. Maybe Randall was grabbing the cake, balloons, whatever. Maybe Caleb was in on it. Maybe. But the maybe felt hollow. This wasn't the first time I'd woken up on my birthday and felt invisible. I remembered my 35th. Randall forgot entirely until his mom reminded him on Facebook. The year before that, he bought me a vacuum, said it was practical. Another year, he took me out to dinner, but spent most of it watching a game over my shoulder. Once, when I hinted I wanted a weekend away, he said, "Let's not make a big deal. It's just another day." It was never just another day when it was someone else's birthday. When Venus turned 30, Randall rented a private room at that seafood place she liked. Toasts. Custom cake. Live music. The works. I remember standing beside them, holding my purse, smiling like I belonged. Venus always drew attention. She didn't ask for it, she just had it. Even as kids, she was the one teachers fawned over, the one mom fussed over. I got used to being the one who could handle things. Who didn't need much. When Randall came into my life, I thought that would change. For a while, it did. But little by little, I started shrinking again. I'd gotten good at disappearing. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text. It was from Mia, my college roommate, now living in Atlanta. "Hey Harp. So sad I couldn't make it to your birthday party last night. Looked amazing." My stomach flipped. Last night? I stared at the screen, then typed back, "What party?" Seconds later, she sent a photo. The image loaded slow. Then it hit. A room full of people, my people, gathered around a long table. Streamers, fairy lights, a cake with happy 40th, Harper in gold icing. There was Randall at the center, holding a champagne flute. Smiling wide. And right next to him, Venus. Her arm wrapped through his. My name. My cake. My husband. My sister. And I wasn't there. I hadn't even known. I sat down. Hard. Like my knees forgot how to hold me up. The phone trembled in my hand. My mouth went dry. That was my party. Thrown for me without me. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not really. I just stared. Until the room blurred. Then I called him. Hey, Randall answered, too casual. Everything okay? How was your night? I asked, keeping my voice even. Quiet, he said. Just stayed in. Watched a little TV. You? The lie was smooth. Like he'd practiced it. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I hung up, went to my laptop, and started digging. Facebook. Instagram. Nothing on his page. Nothing on Venus's either. But friends had posted a few shots, some untagged. I found 5. 6. A boomerang of Randall popping a bottle. A selfie of Venus with the caption "Cheers to 40." I wasn't in a single frame. Because I wasn't there. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a decision. Exclusion. I closed the laptop. My heart thudded against my ribs. But not from heartbreak. From something sharper. Quieter. Anger curling up behind my ribs like a lit match. I called Venus. Well, she answered, look who finally decided to pick up. I saw the pictures, I said. Voice flat. No emotion. She didn't skip a beat. Yeah, it was kind of last minute. You didn't think I should be there? She snorted. I told Randall you'd make it weird. You take everything so personally. He deserved a little fun without the guilt trip. The word sliced. I didn't yell. Didn't scream. I just said, wow. She laughed. You always make everything about you. I hung up. I sat in my bedroom for what felt like hours. The air got thick, heavy. But I didn't cry. My mind was too busy rewinding. Replaying every side glance, every too long hug between them. Every time Randall said Venus was just helping out. How long had this been going on? Then, another message. No name. Just a video. Thought you should see this. I hesitated, then clicked play. The footage was grainy. Phone camera. A dim room, loud voices. Randall's voice, sharp, you're making a scene. Then mine, don't touch me. A slap. Audible. Sharp. My head snapped back. Gasps in the background. The screen went black. And just like that, everything shifted. My phone was vibrating like it had something urgent to say. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was still dim. Morning light hadn't fully broken through the blinds, but my screen was lit up like a Christmas tree. 37 unread texts. Dozens of missed calls. Alerts. Tag notifications. My chest tightened. My first thought. Maybe someone posted more pictures from that ridiculous party. But then I saw it, a subject line in bold letters from a coworker, "Is this your husband?" I sat up. Opened the email. A video embedded from Facebook. Thousands of shares. It buffered for a second then played. It wasn't from last night. It was from last year's Christmas fundraiser at church. I recognized the banner behind us, the table with the toy donations. The camera angle caught the corner of the hall. Randall's voice raised. Sharp. Mine, trying to de-escalate. I'd stepped in, touched his arm. And then, the slap. His hand across my face. The sound echoed even through the phone speaker. My own gasp could be heard in the video, followed by a stunned silence from people off-screen. You could see it, the disbelief in the few faces caught in the frame. I'd buried that night deep. Now it was on full display. I remember that night. I bumped into him mid-sentence. It wasn't even an argument. Just tension in the air, like we were always walking a tightrope in public. He turned. Snapped. It happened fast. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and smiled at the people watching. I told myself it was stress. That he was under pressure. We went home. We didn't talk about it again. That was my mistake. I'd been patching cracks in the dam for years, pretending the water wasn't rising. People don't notice when you're breaking, especially if you're still smiling. The phone kept buzzing. Comments, reactions, group chats going off. Some messages were filled with outrage. Others, just silence. Randall's coworker Jeff sent a half-hearted "hope you two are okay." Another friend texted, "saw the video. If you need anything but then nothing else." Most were just watching. My boss emailed, suggesting I take a few days off to process. Venus finally texted, "This is a mess. What were you thinking releasing it?" I stared at her message. I didn't post it. I hadn't even known it existed. Then Randall's name flashed across the screen, voicemail. I didn't pick up, but he left a message. "You've humiliated me, Harper. What the hell were you thinking? We need to talk. No apology. No ownership. Just blame." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. The video looped in my head. That moment. The look in his eyes. The way he didn't even hesitate. I'd been defending him for so long, I barely noticed I was defending something indefensible. Was I complicit? Did I let this fester by pretending it wasn't real? I opened a blank page in my journal. I hadn't written in months. I stared at the line, then wrote it out. It was abuse. I underlined it. Once. Then again. I didn't delete the video. I didn't report it either. I wasn't ready for that. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going to cover for him anymore. A knock at the door pulled me out of the spiral. It was Carla, my neighbor, a widow in her 70s. She held a small container of soup and a loaf of bread wrapped in wax paper. "I saw," she said, gently. No pity in her eyes. Just quiet understanding. She didn't push. Just sat across from me, poured the soup into bowls. We ate in silence for a few minutes before she spoke again. My bruises faded. The shame didn't. Don't carry it like I did. I looked up. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes did. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the peace, keeping it inside. But it rots you, Harper. Bit by bit. I felt tears press behind my eyes. She stood, pulled her coat over her shoulders. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou's words. I'd read them before, but now they settled in me differently. After she left, I sat by the window, watching her cross the street. For the first time in a long while, I felt something shift. I wasn't the only one. I opened my email, scrolling through the flood of noise, then stopped. A message from the same anonymous account that had sent the first video. Subject: you need to see the rest. Attached, a file labeled "before the party." I stared at it. My hand hovered over the mouse. Then I clicked. I sat in the low afternoon light, the living room around me silent except for the hum of my laptop. The video file was sitting there, unnamed, ominous, and I stared at it for a long time before I clicked. My fingers hovered. Sign that I was about to open something I couldn't close again. My breath came shallow. I made tea, hoping the ritual would slow me down. It didn't. The mug warmed my hands, but not my mind. I pressed play. Full screen, silence filled the space. Then the footage rolled. It was a backyard barbecue from last summer, my garage door wide open, laughter drifting over the yard, wine glasses clinking. Randall leaned against the garage frame, arms crossed, smiling. Venus stood beside him, tossing her head back at something he whispered in her ear. They were closer than friends. Not a hug. Something quieter, something planned. Venus laughed, matched his smile. She reached for his arm mid-sentence. Then she said it, she'll never guess. She trusts both of us too much. I froze. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. My own sister and my husband, together in a game where I was the punchline. Scenes replayed in my head. Venus volunteering to help Randall with his taxes in the spring. Her absent from a family dinner, claiming she had a headache. Months earlier I noticed a familiar cologne on my throw blanket. Venus had borrowed it, I thought innocently. Now they all made sense. I realized I had been living in a story they wrote without me. I sat back and let it sink in. Betrayal didn't come in the obvious gestures only. It came in the rewriting of a life you thought was yours. Clarity washed over me, cold, hard. My first instinct was to throw the mug. My second was to pick up the phone and hammer out a rage-filled text. Instead I froze. Strategic stillness. I opened a blank document and began to timestamp, minute by minute, frame by frame. Created a folder on my desktop labeled Truth. This was no longer about getting them to see it. It was about me documenting it. I felt a strange shift. I knew more than they thought I did. That knowledge was quiet power. I whispered to myself, this time, I will not be blindsided. Then I heard the ding of a voicemail. My old friend Naomi. She said, I saw the video. I think you should know about Venus. I invited her for coffee the next morning. The conversation ahead would be hard, maybe harder than what I'd already faced. On the drive to clear my head I rolled down the window and let the breeze hit my face. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was racing. If this went beyond what even I suspected, how far did the betrayal run? Later at night I got another message. Screenshot of Venus and Randall at a hotel check-in. No date. No explanation. Attached line, you still don't know everything. My phone buzzed in my hand, heavy. I let it sit. I didn't click. Not yet. For the first time in years, I felt more than hurt. I felt hungry. 2 days had passed since I watched the backyard footage, since I saw Venus's hand brush Randall's arm like it belonged there. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, not in the act, but in the aftermath. Smiling. Moving freely in the space I built, like they had every right to rewrite my life. This morning I sat at my desk, scrolling through emails, bills, digital dust. I opened a folder labeled Event Receipts and there it was, an invoice from the venue that hosted the party. But something was off. The host's name didn't say Harper Pike. It said Rowena Pike. My breath hitched. I remembered signing the earlier version of that contract weeks ago. I'd been the one who joked at the barbecue last summer, guess I'll throw myself a real 40th party one day. Now the signature line had changed. I wasn't just left out, I'd been replaced. Officially. My hands went cold. That's what betrayal looked like when it wore a paper trail. I texted Frey Benton, the event planner. Kept it simple, can we talk? Just coffee. No drama. We met at a cafe off Broad Street. Quiet, upscale, filled with people who wore secrets well. Frey showed up in pressed linen and sunglasses she didn't take off. I ordered tea, she ordered nothing. Just sat, arms crossed. I leaned in and said, the name changed on the contract. She nodded. Yes. It was adjusted. Night before the event. I didn't blink. Just waited. She looked down. There was pressure. I was told you were overwhelmed, that Venus was handling it with Randall's blessing. And you believed them. She sighed. People pay me to believe them. I hit record on my phone, screen down, and didn't ask for permission. She leaned in. Look, you're walking into something bigger than a bad birthday. These people? They choreograph things. If you're smart, you'll play along. I thanked her and left. But I wasn't playing anymore. Not by their rules. Back home, I sat in my office, reclined, stared at the ceiling like it could hold an answer. My father once told me, silence costs more than speaking sometimes. I wrote those words down, underlined them. Then I added, if I stay quiet, I become their alibi. I'd been quiet for decades. Let Rowena take center stage, let Randall rewrite history. I archived everything. PDFs, screenshots, call logs. I didn't rage. I prepared. Later that afternoon, I sent Rowena a text, thanks for stepping in. I'll clear my calendar for photos next week. No accusation. Just acknowledgement. Subtle. Her reply came quick, good. We'll talk soon. The words were fine. The tone was not. She was rattled. I reviewed the guest list Frey had shown me. Cross names I didn't know, circled one I did, someone I hadn't seen since my wedding, now listed in the VIP row. Why? I forwarded the contract to Marianne, an old friend turned estate lawyer. Asked if an unsigned copy held any weight. She wrote back one line, depends who knew about it and who didn't. That night, I climbed into the attic. Needed air, space something. I found an old box marked 2009. Inside, a photo album. My 30th birthday. There was Rowena, front and center, holding the cake, smiling wide. I was in the background, half in shadow. On the opposite page was a dried maple leaf, taped flat. It took me a minute to remember. The leaf came from a napkin my son made in art class. He handed it to me at that party. This is for you, Mama. Like a crown. I'd kept it all this time, maybe because it was the one honest gift in a room full of performance. I took the leaf and slid it under my laptop keyboard. A small, quiet crown. My own reminder. I'd been made invisible, but not anymore. At 10:43 p.m., I got a message. No text, just a photo. A dinner reservation under Randall's name. Same venue. Tomorrow night. The same place they'd thrown that party. And the reservation name? M. Hessa. That wasn't my name. But I knew that name. I was folding towels when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Daniels from next door, her voice shaking. "Turn on channel 5, honey. Now." The TV flickered to life, and there he was, Randall. Sitting across from a news anchor, hair neat, tie perfect, a lawyer beside him. His tone was calm, practiced. "This has been a painful week," he began, eyes lowered like a grieving saint. "My wife released that video in an attempt to damage my reputation after a disagreement. I love her, but she's been struggling." The word hit like ice water. Struggling. The lawyer leaned forward. "We're concerned for her emotional stability. Fame, attention, it can distort perception." My hands stopped mid-fold. The laundry slipped from my arms, hitting the floor with a soft thud that somehow sounded like thunder. He wasn't defending himself. He was rewriting the truth, and this time, the whole town was watching him do it. The anchor nodded with sympathy. "It must be hard watching a loved one spiral." He smiled. "I just hope she gets the help she needs." I turned off the TV. The silence afterward was deafening. For a long minute, I just stood there, frozen in place, then my knees gave way. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, breath coming in short, useless gasps. My fingers tingled. The walls seemed to hum. "They're not going to believe me," I whispered. "They never do." It reminded me of the time in middle school when a teacher accused me of cheating because Venus said she'd seen me glance at her paper. I hadn't. I remembered the burn of shame, the sting of helplessness. The same feeling now, just deeper, older. I wasn't crying from sadness anymore. It was fury. A kind that crawled under my skin and refused to leave. For a second, I thought about deleting everything. The videos, the files, the folder labeled truth. Just let it all fade, let them win quietly. But then I picked up my phone again, thumb shaking as I scrolled through social media, mind numb. And then I saw her name, Carla. My neighbor. She had posted the video. The one of the slap. Her caption read, "This is why we speak. This is why we never accept the first story." Hundreds of comments underneath, people defending me. Strangers. Old classmates. A few even said, I always knew something was off about him. Something inside me steadied. Carla's voice echoed in my head, "The world will always give you silence. You don't have to take it." I took a screenshot of her post and saved it into my truth folder. A quiet, deliberate motion. My small rebellion. The next morning, I met Naomi at the cafe by the marina. The wind off the water cut through the air, salty and sharp. She was already there, a paper cup in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. She didn't speak at first, just hugged me, long, wordless. Then she slid the envelope across the table. Photos. Randall and Venus, years back. Same closeness, same smiles I once thought were innocent. Naomi looked at me, eyes heavy with guilt. I distanced myself because I saw what they were capable of. I didn't want to be next. I nodded. No anger. Just understanding. We both knew what fear could make people do, or not do. We talked for an hour. Not about revenge, not even pain. About survival. About how truth weighed differently when you carried it alone. By the time we stood to leave, I wasn't shaking anymore. Back home, I sat in front of my mirror and began to practice speaking. Not softly, not apologetically, clearly. I rehearsed what I'd say if someone asked about the video, the interview, the lies. My reflection looked back at me, tired, older, but steady. Then I called Marianne, my lawyer friend. I need advice on a restraining order, I said. And defamation, media coverage, statements. All of it. She didn't ask why. Just said, I'll make time. When I hung up, I picked up my journal and wrote, "Don't let the camera define you. Use it first." That night, just as the house settled into quiet, there was a knock at the door. I hesitated before opening it. No one was there. Only a small brown package on the mat. No return address. I brought it inside, set it on the counter, opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph, me and Naomi, taken that afternoon, walking from the cafe. On the back, printed in block letters. "Talk again, and you'll regret it." The room seemed to tilt for a second. I steadied myself on the counter, heart pounding. And for the first time, I realized the worst wasn't behind me. It was only beginning. I sat at my desk long after dark, the only light coming from the laptop screen and a lone desk lamp. I opened the folder labeled Truth and let the receipts and invoices scroll across the monitor. One screenshot caught my breath, a line item showing a payment to the venue, paid from my account, for the gala celebrating Harper Hesse 40th birthday. I clicked another tab, bank statement, date stamped. My arms went cold. They used me as a silent sponsor. I remembered the phone call last spring. The venue asked if I still wished to pay the remainder of the balance on a community event. I answered yes without looking. I didn't ask what event. I didn't reconcile details. I trusted. I thought I was helping. Now I saw the truth, they were hiding it from me, and paying for it through me. I closed the laptop lid, pulled on my coat, stepped outside into the humid Charleston night. Air tasted like salt and betrayal. I drove along the coastal road. Window down. The breeze slapped my face. My phone rang. Rowena's name lit up the screen. I let it ring until it vanished. I told myself, if I answer now, I lose control. So, I parked the car, left the engine ticking, leaned back, stared at the universe and reminded myself, I refuse to be the quiet check writer anymore. I sent a text to Silas, "We need to talk Tuesday. 6 p.m. I didn't know if it was a challenge or a trap, but I didn't care. I wasn't turning back. Back at home, I sat down and drafted a letter to the editor of the local paper. I didn't hide behind tears. I wrote, "Invisible women fund everything and get nothing in return." I reflected on a book I'd read, "You don't find your voice, you free it." I paused at the quote, "When you know better you do better." Maya Angelou. With a deep breath I attached a redacted screenshot summary and hit send. My palms trembled. The line was crossed. There was no going back. Later that night an email arrived, Silas's attorney demanding I retract the op-ed or face a libel suit. I stared at the screen, the single lamp turning my living room shadows long. Fear flicked alongside satisfaction and resolve. I thought of my father's words, "If you don't set the boundary, someone else will." I pressed play on a voice recorder in my pocket, hit record. "I am done being silent," I whispered. I wasn't just reacting. I was initiating. At 2 a.m. my son, Ari, knocked lightly on my bedroom door. His face was pale in the hallway light. "Mom, someone left this at our doorstep." I followed him outside. On the doormat lay a plain envelope. Inside, a USB stick with one label in bold, "Party Final Cut." No name. No return address. I felt the ground shift beneath me. I walked into the courthouse reception room and saw him, my father, Malcolm Hesse, seated quietly in the corner. He looked older than I remembered, lips pressed into a thin line, his posture stiff. I carried the binder of evidence in my hand, flipped it open silently, and placed it on the table between us. He didn't blink. His silence hit me harder than any argument. "You watched her get away with it," I said softly. The words hovered in the air. He shifted in his chair, avoiding my gaze. I realized then, this wasn't just about my husband or sister, it was about him letting their version of the story become the only version. "If you don't stand up, you stand by." That line echoed through me like thunder in a quiet room. My mind stepped back to the hotel lobby where the party was held. I saw my name missing from the guest list. The staff told me I worked the event. A drink was handed to me with the phrase, "Let's get back to work." I was the daughter, not the guest, the illusion was crafted. I recalled telling myself I'd be the planner this time, finally. Then I found shredded pages behind my shredder, a speech I'd drafted, to the people who never saw me burned before I ever spoke. That moment wasn't a mistake. It was design. At home later, I spread out the documents on the kitchen island, guest lists, signed contracts, check stubs, coffee receipts. I turned off my phone's ringer and took a deep breath. This isn't revenge, it's correction, I told myself. I called my lawyer. I pulled up my video script on the laptop and rehearsed aloud. My father's silence, my sister's performance, my husband's lies, all laid bare. I scheduled a live stream for 7 p.m. next Thursday. That unknown number, with the warning "You're playing in dangerous waters," buzzed again. I didn't flinch. I pressed send on my message, "I've already been in this ocean too long." Later that night, headlights appeared outside my house. The car idled. Then the window slid down and I caught Venus's reflection, her lips curling into a thin smile. "You should have stayed silent," she said. My door locked behind me as I went inside. I didn't answer. I just walked into the dark hallway of my home and felt something shift. The war was no longer behind closed doors, it was visible. The sky was overcast, but it didn't matter. I stepped onto the courthouse steps and the camera flashes greeted me like they had been waiting their whole lives to capture this exact moment. My heels hit the stone like punctuation. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I looked straight into the sea of eyes and lenses and held my ground. I had practiced my statement, not for flair but for truth. For years I paid for other people's parties, and held the smile while they built their stories on my silence. Hands shot up. Reporters yelled over each other, questions about the money trail, about the video, about why I hadn't spoken sooner. My voice stayed even. I answered what mattered. "Because I didn't think I was allowed to," I said. And now I know I never needed permission. Across the plaza, I spotted Rowena and Silas. They were watching. Silent. Still. But no longer hidden. Then I saw her, Tamsin Gray. Front row. She didn't clap. Just stared. Her eyes didn't blink, but her loyalty was shifting. I could feel it. The next wave came quick. A screen rose behind the podium. My binder, now a slideshow. Pages, invoices, contracts. Each one real. Verified. One slide froze the crowd. A breakdown labeled venue, $27,500, paid by LH sat in bold at the bottom. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could feel the breath suck out of the gathering. Phones came out. Screens lit up. Within moments, I could see the headline climbing, "Invisible Sponsor." Silas shifted, fingers twitching. Rowena's jaw tensed. My internal voice said it flatly. Now they know what it's like when the camera turns toward you, not away. The air thickened. Whispers turned to noise. Then Tamsin stood. No warning. Just rose from her seat, microphone already in hand. I was paid, she said, steady as steel, to write the LinkedIn post that praised Mr. Ward's family values event. Gasps. A ripple through the crowd like a stone in water. I didn't flinch. I just watched as Rowena turned sharply. Silas stepped forward, his face caught between fury and fear. Tamsin's voice didn't shake. I should have said something sooner. But I say it now. I didn't know what I felt more, vindicated or hollowed out. This wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal with layers. My hand stayed by my side, but inside, something cracked and reset. After the press broke, I walked through the side of the building and found a quiet alley beside the courthouse. My back met the cool brick wall, and I stared into the concrete. The noise behind me faded. They still have power, I thought. They still own media, control narrative, buy silence. Then I remembered what Ari told a reporter that afternoon. I watched from the studio monitor as he said it, Mom has been strong. For all of us. Even when we didn't see it. That one sentence carried more than a dozen of their lies. I pulled out my phone. Typed without flinching, I will not celebrate their day. I will reset my own life. And I locked the screen. It wasn't over. But I wasn't hiding anymore. Later that night, after dinner was cleared and the house had quieted, I stepped out to check the mailbox. That's when I saw it. An unmarked envelope on my windshield. No postage. No name. Inside, just a small silver key tag. Engraved, 40K. I stood in the driveway, holding that cold little thing in my hand. No explanation. No threat spelled out. But I understood exactly what it meant. 2 months later, I found myself standing on the porch of a small cabin tucked into the hills of Asheville. The wood still smelled new, but the air carried something older, pine, mist, peace. No one here knew my name or my story, and that anonymity felt like oxygen. At first, the silence was unbearable. It pressed against my ears like static. But over time, it softened. Became rhythm. A kind of music that didn't ask anything of me. I unpacked slowly. No rush, no deadlines. Every object I kept had passed through fire, literally or otherwise. The only photo I placed on the shelf was of Ari and me at his graduation, both of us squinting into sunlight, half laughing, half proud. I made tea, sat on the porch, and for the first time in years, let myself breathe without checking who was watching. A letter from the courthouse sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I dared to open it. When I finally did, the sound of paper tearing felt louder than it should have. The ruling was short. Silas denied spousal support. My name cleared from all financial responsibility. A public apology ordered, 1 week on his professional site. I didn't smile. I just let the air leave my chest, slow and steady. Rowena had vanished online. Her so-called wellness brand evaporated after the truth broke. No press releases. No comebacks. Just silence, the kind that ends rather than heals. Ari texted later that evening, "Proud of you, Mom." I didn't reply right away. I just held the phone in my hand until the screen went dark. That night I wrote in my journal, "Peace isn't the absence of war. It's the decision not to keep fighting ghosts." A few days later, someone knocked at the cabin door. When I opened it, Tamsin stood there. No makeup. Red eyes. Shoulders small. She didn't try to hug me. Just said, "I'm sorry." Not the kind of sorry that asks for forgiveness, the kind that comes when there's nothing left to defend. We sat with tea, and she told me everything. How Silas had offered her money, just weeks ago, to leak a false story suggesting I'd staged everything. She refused. Came here instead. I listened, quiet. When she finished, I told her, "I'm not fighting anymore. That war's already in the ground." Before she left, she slid an envelope across my table. Photos from the birthday party. The one he'd hidden. I didn't even open it. Just fed them, one by one, into the fireplace. The paper curled, darkened, disappeared. Watching them burn didn't bring satisfaction, it brought space. In the weeks that followed, I started volunteering at the local library. Nothing dramatic, just shelving books, helping with the children's reading hour. Ordinary kindness felt like healing. People spoke to me without knowing anything about my past. And that, in itself, was mercy. Ari came to visit one weekend, with his girlfriend. We hiked, laughed, cooked too much food. He told me I looked lighter. I smiled and told him I'd traded anger for quiet. That night, as I was washing dishes, he said softly, "You didn't just teach me how to love, Mom. You taught me when to leave." I turned away so he wouldn't see the tears. Sometimes freedom feels like grief when it first arrives. The next morning, I handed him the cabin key. "In case you ever need stillness," I said. He nodded, slipping it into his jacket without a word. After they left, I walked back to the porch. The mountain wind carried the faintest chill. I reached into a drawer and pulled out the small metal tag, 40K. It had lost its menace. I polished it clean, then nailed it to the oak tree outside. No explanation. No ceremony. It didn't represent what they did anymore. It represented what I survived. That night, I wrote one last post. "The unseen woman is done hiding." It went viral within hours. But this time, it wasn't out of pity or scandal, it was because people finally heard the truth in my silence. There won't be a next chapter in their story. Mine has only just begun.